big hurricane, affected even us in our area here, even though we don't feel the effects of it. I'll give you a quick rundown of Sandy here. It formed out of an area of disturbed weather on October 22nd, 2012 in the Caribbean. Made landfall in Cuba as a major hurricane where it quickly gained that status. And it maintained that major hurricane status over the mountains, which is winds of over 115 miles an hour sustained. As it moved up toward the Bahamas, Sandy became very large and an unprecedented size, the largest cyclone in Atlantic history. I don't know why that keeps popping up. And it made a transition to a post-tropical cyclone only 50 miles off the shore of New Jersey. This was very problematic for the National Hurricane Center. I'll get to that in just a minute here. It made landfall in New Jersey with winds of 80 miles an hour, equivalent to a Category 1 hurricane, but did not make landfall as a hurricane. Sandy was, like I said, a monster of a storm and a forecasting nightmare. As Sandy moved up from Cuba, it encountered a very hostile environment, and because that grew in a very large size. This is actually a map of the tropical storm force and hurricane force winds, and as you can see, this thing is monstrous. Winds of tropical storm force occurring across much of the United States eastern seaboard, whereas only a tropical storm warning is in effect from North Carolina. National Hurricane Center, I believe, made a mistake in doing this. It was important to determine when Sandy would become post-tropical, because that's when the National Hurricane Center would have to actually stop issuing advisories on Hurricane Sandy and throw it over to another advisory center called the Hydrometeorological Prediction Center. Tongue twister, I know. Unfortunately, with this, there's very limited forecasting skill involving this area of study. So some definitions I should teach you guys about. A tropical cyclone, it's a warm core, low pressure area, doesn't have any fronts along with it, originating over tropical or subtropical waters, with organized deep convection, or thunderstorms in this case, with a closed surface wind field around a well-defined center of circulation. Of course, that's your hurricanes, tropical storms, etc. A post-tropical cyclone is defined as a former tropical cyclone. They're declared post-tropical when they no longer meet the definition of a tropical cyclone and can either become extratropical cyclones or remnant lows. We're not going to talk about remnant lows, but we'll talk about an extratropical cyclone, which is an area of low pressure that gives us basically, a good example of this would be our wintertime lows, stuff that brings us severe weather to our areas, basically anything that's non-tropical. Here's a good picture example. That's Hurricane Isabel on the left. This is a storm system that brought us a big severe weather outbreak in 2010. Of course, Isabel is a tropical cyclone. This one's an extratropical cyclone. Now, Hurricane Sandy, going back to my point here, because Sandy was forecast to turn post-tropical so close to the coastline, the National Hurricane Center decided not to issue hurricane and tropical storm warnings north of North Carolina. And because they have very limited forecasting skill, turned out to be a huge mistake. Got to that far into the coast before it actually turned post-tropical. As it actually approached the coast, the National Hurricane Center admitted in their post-storm report that hurricane force winds occurred over a very limited area over the United States while Sandy was still fully tropical. This should have warranted a hurricane warning over the United States eastern coast, I should say. In 2012, a tropical storm watch, tropical storm warning, basically the same thing. An announcement that sustained winds of 39 to 73 miles an hour are possible in a warning area, or expected for a warning, within 48 to 36 hours from a tropical cyclone. Same thing with a hurricane watch and warning, except that it's winds over 74 miles an hour, and they issue the warning in 36 hours in advance of tropical storm force winds, because that's when preparations are made difficult. Because Sandy was tropical, so close to the coast, tropical storm warnings and hurricane warnings should have been issued for the United States East Coast. And because they weren't, the public severely underestimated the risks, along with multiple government officials, with Hurricane Sandy. New York City Mayor Bloomberg actually issued a statement saying because Sandy is not expected to make landfall as a hurricane, the effects would be significantly less than an actual hurricane. This made me rip my hair out. Homeowners were not able to make full use of their insurance due to the fact that the warnings were not issued for their area. As you can see here, this is still a fully tropical cyclone, even though a warm front extends upward at the center of circulation right there. Just a few hours later, the fronts actually connected with Sandy, turning it post-tropical as it made its approach towards the coast of New Jersey. So why were there no warnings issued? In the post-storm report, the National Hurricane Center actually explained that they had three options. The first one would be to issue hurricane and tropical storm warnings, then immediately discontinue them as soon as Sandy turned post-tropical. The Hurricane Center feared that this would be a very bad idea because it would cause even more public confusion with the sudden change from a hurricane warning to a high wind warning. Option two was to call Sandy a hurricane, even though it wasn't a hurricane, potentially for multiple days to keep the Hurricane Center to issue advisories on Sandy. The Hurricane Center feared that this would damage the reputation of the Hurricane Center as well as the National Weather Service, because that's basically telling a lie, even though they did this already. Option three was to call Sandy an extratropical cyclone, but continue issuing advisories on it from the National Hurricane Center. This would not work well with third-party software, and the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration did not want to immediately deploy that option without first testing it. In at least two recent events other than Sandy, the Hurricane Center and the National Weather Service did not issue warnings in situations where they necessarily did not apply. Hurricane Katrina, National Weather Service issued a tornado warning for this one right here, the eye wall Hurricane Katrina. This is because tornado-like wind speeds of up to 130 miles an hour were expected in that area where the eye wall is making landfall. Tornado warnings usually are not issued for that. They are issued when a tornado has been sighted, indicated by radar, or is thought to be forming. Due to the extreme winds, however, this seemed to fit in with the situation. And in the perfect storm of 1991, Hurricane Gracie actually merged with an extratropical cyclone, caused this massive cyclone of the Atlantic, gained full tropical characteristics. However, the National Hurricane Center did not issue any advisories on this system, even though it met all full tropical qualifications. The Hurricane Center feared this would cause mass panic due to it's not going to be coming in shore here. The storm eventually made landfall in Canada's tropical storm. Had warnings been issued, Sandy would have been communicating more effectively the dangers of her. Our area likely would have been under a tropical storm warning. We actually had sustained winds of 40 to 45 miles an hour during Hurricane Sandy. And the public confusion would likely be a lot less than what it actually was.